Lydia had always been an independent woman, running her own successful online business from the comfort of her tidy suburban home. At 48, she had grown accustomed to the solitude of single life, finding fulfillment in her work and the well-manicured garden she tended to on weekends. Everything changed the day David arrived on her doorstep, a bright-eyed 28-year-old graduate student in need of a place to stay. With most of her long-term tenants away for the summer, Lydia found herself saying yes, won over by the young man's polite demeanor and earnest smile. Little did she know the impact he would have on her carefully ordered life. As David settled into the upstairs studio, Lydia couldn't help but notice his dedicated work ethic, often catching glimpses of him hunched over textbooks late into the night. Juggling a demanding internship and part-time job left him little time for socializing, a fact that tugged unexpectedly at Lydia's heartstrings. One morning, on impulse, she invited David to join her for coffee in the garden. He accepted with a grateful grin, and soon it became a weekend ritual. Sipping cappuccinos among the rose bushes, discussing everything from David's biology research to Lydia's latest entrepreneurial venture. She found herself looking forward to these chats more and more, drawn to David's curious mind and compassionate nature. When David mentioned his struggles to keep on top of finances, Lydia jumped at the chance to offer him some part-time bookkeeping work. It was the perfect arrangement. He could earn some extra cash while lightening her administrative load, and if it meant spending a few more hours in his calming presence each week, well, that was just a bonus. As the summer wore on, Lydia felt a subtle shift in their dynamic. David's easy smiles seemed to linger a moment longer than necessary, his hand brushing hers as they pored over spreadsheets. She chalked it up to her overactive imagination, chiding herself for entertaining such inappropriate thoughts. He was young enough to be her son, for goodness sake, but lonely nights had a way of weakening one's resolve. One muggy August evening, unable to sleep, Lydia ventured downstairs for a glass of water, only to find David in the kitchen, clad in pajama bottoms and little else. They stared at each other for a charged moment, before David cleared his throat awkwardly. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. Just needed a drink." Lydia nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As he brushed past her to grab a glass, she caught the scent of his soap, clean and masculine. It made her head swim. Before she could second-guess herself, Lydia placed a tentative hand on David's bare chest. He stilled, his heart hammering beneath her fingertips. Their eyes met, a question hanging between them. Then, slowly, giving her time to pull away, David lowered his head to capture her lips with his. The kiss was gentle at first, almost reverent, but quickly deepened as weeks of unspoken tension came pouring out. Lydia felt herself being walked backwards until the cool edge of the granite countertop pressed into her lower back. David's hands were everywhere, igniting her nerve endings with the barest touch. Drowning in sensation, Lydia surrendered to the inevitability of the moment. Tomorrow there would be consequences to reckon with, but tonight she would allow herself this one reckless indulgence. Wrapping her legs around David's waist, she let him carry her up the stairs to his waiting bed. The affair burned hot and fast, stolen hours snatched between David's hectic schedule. Lydia knew it couldn't last. He had his whole future ahead of him, while she was entering her twilight years. But she clung to their fragile happiness, telling herself she could be content with whatever he was willing to give. Inevitably, summer drew to a close and David's graduate classes resumed. He threw himself back into his studies with renewed fervor, their trysts growing more infrequent. Lydia sensed him pulling away but was too proud to confront him. She had no claim on his time or affections after all. The final blow came on a crisp October afternoon. Lydia was returning from the market, arms laden with shopping bags, when she spotted David across the street, his arm slung casually around a pretty brunette. They were laughing at some shared joke, oblivious to the world around them. For a moment, Lydia couldn't breathe. Pain lanced through her chest as the reality of her situation crashed down. She was nothing more than a silly middle-aged woman who had foolishly believed a younger man could love her. Blinking back tears, she hurried into the house before they could spot her. That night, Lydia left a note under David's door explaining that she wouldn't require his bookkeeping services any longer. She made no mention of their relationship, knowing it was futile. He had already moved on. In the weeks that followed, Lydia threw herself into her work, determined to excise all traces of David from her life. She tore up the rose bushes where they used to sit, replaced the countertops that held too many memories. Slowly, the raw edges of her heartache began to scar over. One day, many months later, a letter arrived from David. At first, Lydia wanted to burn it unread, but curiosity won out in the end. With shaking hands, she unfolded the single sheet of paper. "Dear Lydia," it began, "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I couldn't leave things the way we did. You deserve so much more than I was able to give you. The truth is, as much as I cared for you, I knew deep down that I wasn't ready for the kind of commitment you needed. It was cowardly of me to let our relationship fade out instead of being honest with you. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. I also wanted you to know how much my time with you meant to me. Your strength, your brilliance, your generous heart. They inspired me to be a better man. I will always treasure our summer together. I hope that someday you can look back on our relationship with fondness rather than regret. You showed me the true meaning of love, even if I was too immature to fully appreciate it at the time. Thank you for being a bright spot in my life when I needed it most. I wish you every happiness. You deserve that and so much more. Yours, David." Lydia read and reread the letter until the words blurred on the page. It didn't erase the hurt he had caused her, but it was a balm on the wound nonetheless. In time, perhaps she would be able to remember their affair with bittersweet affection rather than searing anguish. She had loved and lost, yes, but she had also dared to reach for happiness, even if only for a fleeting moment. And that, Lydia decided, was a gift in and of itself. Her heart might be bruised, but it was still beating, resilient as ever, ready for whatever joys and sorrows lay ahead. She would pick herself up, dust herself off, and carry on. After all, she was a survivor. And if there was one thing Lydia knew how to do, it was survive. Lydia carefully folded David's letter and tucked it away in her desk drawer, a bittersweet reminder of a chapter closed. She knew that healing would be a slow process, but she was determined to embrace this new season of her life with grace and resilience. In the months that followed, Lydia channeled her energy into her business, pouring her heart into new projects and collaborations. Her online store flourished, and she found a sense of pride in her accomplishments. While the ache of David's absence still lingered, she refused to let it define her. One crisp spring morning, Lydia decided to visit the local farmer's market, hoping to find inspiration for her garden. As she browsed the colorful stalls, a familiar voice called out her name. Turning, she found herself face to face with James, a handsome widower who had once rented a room in her house. "Lydia, it's been ages," James exclaimed, his warm brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "How have you been?" Lydia felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach, surprised by the intensity of her reaction to seeing him again. She had always admired James's quiet strength and kindness, but their paths had diverged when he moved out to care for his ailing mother. "I've been well, thank you," she replied, hoping her smile didn't betray the tumult of emotions swirling within her. "Just keeping busy with work and life. How about you?" As they chatted, catching up on the years gone by, Lydia couldn't help but notice how easy it was to talk to James. He listened attentively, offering thoughtful insights and gentle humor. When he mentioned that he had recently moved back to the area, Lydia's heart skipped a beat. "We should grab coffee sometime," James suggested, his tone hopeful. "I'd love to hear more about your business and how you've been holding up." Lydia hesitated, old fears and insecurities rising to the surface. Was she ready to open her heart again? Could she trust herself not to fall into the same patterns that had led to heartbreak with David? But as she gazed into James's earnest eyes, she saw a glimmer of possibility. Here was a man who had known loss and grief, who understood the value of second chances. Perhaps it was time for her to take a leap of faith. "I'd like that," Lydia found herself saying, a genuine smile tugging at her lips. "How about next weekend?" James beamed, clearly delighted by her response. They exchanged numbers and made plans to meet at a cozy cafe downtown. As Lydia walked away from the market, a lightness in her step, she felt a flicker of hope rekindling in her chest. The following Saturday, Lydia took extra care with her appearance, choosing a flattering sundress and applying a touch of makeup. She wanted to feel confident and pretty, even if this was just a casual meetup between old friends. When she arrived at the cafe, James was already waiting, a bouquet of fresh daisies in hand. He greeted her with a warm hug, the scent of his cologne making her pulse race. "These are for you," he said, offering her the flowers. "I remember how much you loved them in your garden." Lydia was touched by the thoughtful gesture, marveling at his attentiveness. As they settled into their seats and began to talk, she found herself getting lost in the cadence of his voice, the way his eyes sparkled when he spoke about his work as a high school counselor. Hours slipped by like minutes, the conversation flowing effortlessly between them. Lydia shared her hopes and dreams for the future, her fears and regrets about the past. James listened without judgment, offering support and encouragement. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the cafe, James reached across the table to take Lydia's hand in his. The touch was electric, sending shivers down her spine. "Lydia," he said softly, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I know we've both been through a lot, and I don't want to rush into anything, but I can't deny the connection I feel with you. Would you be open to seeing where this might lead?" Lydia's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She knew that opening herself up to love again carried risks, that there were no guarantees in life. But as she looked into James's hopeful eyes, she realized that the greatest risk of all was not taking one. She had spent too many years hiding behind her walls, afraid of getting hurt. It was time to embrace the possibility of joy, even if it came with the potential for pain. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I would like that very much." James's face lit up with a dazzling smile, and he raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. In that moment, Lydia felt a wave of peace wash over her, a sense that everything was unfolding exactly as it should. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But with James by her side, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. And so, hand in hand, they stepped out into the fading light, hearts full of hope and possibility. Lydia had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she was excited to find out. As they walked along the tree-lined streets, James turned to her with a mischievous grin. "So, tell me, Lydia, have you ever been ballroom dancing?" Lydia laughed, shaking her head. "I can't say that I have. Why do you ask?" "Well, there's this wonderful dance studio downtown that offers lessons for beginners. I've always wanted to learn, but I never had the right partner." He gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "Until now, perhaps?" Lydia felt a thrill of anticipation at the thought of twirling across the dance floor in James's arms. It was a new adventure, a chance to step outside her comfort zone and try something different. "I'd love to," she replied, returning his smile. "Let's do it." And so, a new chapter began in Lydia's life, one filled with laughter, love, and the occasional foxtrot. She knew that there would be missteps along the way, moments of uncertainty and doubt. But she also knew that she had the strength within her to face whatever challenges came her way. With James as her partner, both on and off the dance floor, Lydia felt a sense of wholeness she had never known before. She had finally found her rhythm, her place in the world. And as they swayed to the music, lost in each other's eyes, Lydia knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful journey. One step at a time, one day at a time together.